The town of Pine Hollow was known for its dense, towering woods. The pines stretched high into the sky, their branches knitting together to block out the sun, casting the forest floor in perpetual twilight. Local legends spoke of the woods being haunted, but these were tales told to scare children. At least, that's what most believed. Maggie didn't put much stock in old wives' tales. She was a rational woman, a skeptic who found comfort in logic and science. So when she inherited her grandmother's old cabin on the outskirts of Pine Hollow, she decided to spend a weekend there, using the time to clear out the place and enjoy some solitude. The cabin itself was quaint, nestled at the edge of the woods, surrounded by ancient pines that seemed to groan under their own weight. As Maggie approached, the door creaked open on rusty hinges, revealing the interior. Dust blanketed the furniture and the air was thick with the scent of old wood and forgotten memories. After hours of cleaning, Maggie settled into an old rocking chair by the fire. She smiled as she opened a book she'd brought with her. The only sounds were the crackling of the fire and the wind rustling through the trees outside. But as night fell, the woods came alive with sounds that were not so easily explained. They began with a whisper, barely audible, carried on the breeze. Maggie dismissed it as the wind playing tricks on her ears. But then the whispers grew louder, more insistent, as if they were trying to tell her something. She closed her book and listened, straining to hear the words. The voices were faint, but she could make out her name. Maggie. Maggie. A chill ran down her spine. She stood up and peered out the window. The trees swayed, their branches scratching at the cabin's walls like fingernails on a chalkboard. The shadows between the pines seemed to shift, as if something was moving within them. Maggie shook her head, telling herself it was just her imagination. She decided to go to bed early, hoping sleep would drive away the unease. But sleep did not come easily. The whispers continued, persistent and unrelenting, now accompanied by soft footsteps outside her window. She pulled the covers over her head, trying to block out the sounds, but they only grew louder, more desperate. Suddenly the footsteps stopped, replaced by a loud knock on the cabin door. Maggie froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She waited, hoping whoever or whatever it was would go away. But the knocking continued, more frantic with each passing second. Gathering her courage, Maggie grabbed a flashlight and crept toward the door. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice trembling. No answer, only silence. She took a deep breath and opened the door. The beam of her flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but the empty porch and the trees beyond. The whispering stopped abruptly, leaving an eerie stillness in its wake. Maggie stepped outside, her breath visible in the cold night air. She shined the light around but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Just the woods, quiet and still, as if they were holding their breath. She was about to turn back when she noticed something at the edge of the tree line, a figure half hidden in the shadows. It was tall and thin, with unnaturally long limbs, its eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. The whispers returned, louder now, surrounding her, filling her head with jumbled words she couldn't understand. "Maggie." The figure rasped, its voice a twisted echo of the whispers. Panic surged through her. She stumbled back into the cabin, slamming the door shut and locking it. The whispers turned into a cacophony, the figure's voice rising above them all. "You shouldn't have come here." The walls of the cabin seemed to close in around her, the shadows growing darker, more oppressive. The air turned thick, suffocating, as if the woods themselves were pressing in on her. She could feel something moving inside the cabin now, creeping closer. Desperate, Maggie grabbed her phone and dialed, but the call wouldn't go through. The signal was dead, cut off by the oppressive force surrounding her. The whispers were inside the cabin now, right behind her, growing louder and louder until they were all she could hear. And then, just as suddenly as they had started, the whispers stopped. The cabin was plunged into silence, broken only by the sound of her own ragged breathing. Maggie turned slowly, dread pooling in her stomach. Standing in the center of the room was the figure, its eyes glowing with a cold, malevolent light. It reached out with one long skeletal hand, and the whispers began again, a deafening roar in her ears. The last thing Maggie saw before the darkness consumed her was the figure's twisted smile, as it whispered her name one final time. When the townsfolk of Pine Hollow came to check on Maggie a few days later, they found the cabin empty, the door wide open. Inside, everything was undisturbed, except for the rocking chair, which swayed gently back and forth as if someone had just left it. The woods were silent that day, but the whispers in the pines had claimed another soul, and Pine Hollow's legends grew a little darker,